The initial deal on Iran's nuclear program vexes Israel, with the Prime Minister predicting a Middle East arms race. America says it's currently unable to evacuate all of its people from Yemen, despite the first U.S. citizen being killed there by Saudi airstrikes. And California's drought becomes the worst in over a millennium, with locals concerned that fracking companies are only making it worse. The Worldwide News, live from Moscow. This is RT International. The days-old deal aiming to curb Iran's nuclear program is haunting Israel's prime minister. It's going to be a nightmare for the world, he says, and will lay nuclear tripwires all across the Middle East.
One of the unfortunate, even tragic results of this deal is that it would spark an arms race among the Sunni states, a nuclear arms race in the Middle East.
Well, let's take a look at who might be involved in an arms race. Saudi Arabia has already said it wants to enrich uranium. It's not ruling out acquiring nuclear weapons either, with one White House advisor saying it could get them from Pakistan. Another possible runner is Israel itself. A recently declassified U.S. report suggests it was preparing to build a bomb as early as the 1980s. And geopolitical analyst Eric Draitser believes Netanyahu is trying to distract attention away from Israel's own nuclear stockpile.
What Netanyahu is getting at is, again, the idea that Iran's negotiated settlement is going to touch off a nuclear arms race. This is a laughable notion. Israel wants to deflect attention away from its own weapons of mass destruction and place that focus on Iran in a hypothetical scenario. The fact that they've maintained a sort of non-committal position on what exactly their nuclear arsenal is should not be taken to mean that Israel has a limited capability. They most certainly do not. Israel has probably one of the most robust nuclear arsenals in the world. What Israel wants to do is they want to distort the reality, the picture in the Middle East, to justify their aggressive policies, justify aggressive rhetoric, and justify what they need for U.S. political consumption. What he should be commenting on, what he of course won't be commenting on, is the fact that the real military escalation is happening in Saudi Arabia. It's happening among those Sunni states that are supported by the United States.
So this is the deal that's been struck with Iran. It's being allowed to enrich uranium, but only at one facility and only below weapons grade. And compliance will be ensured through inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency. A family of 9 has been killed during airstrikes close to Yemen's capital, Sana'a. Locals say the weekend saw the fiercest bombardment since the Saudi-led operation began. More than 20 coalition airstrikes over 10 days against the Shia Houthis have claimed hundreds of lives. Destroyed infrastructure has thousands more with no water, fuel, food and very limited access to aid. A number of countries, including France, Russia, Pakistan and Turkey, have evacuated their citizens from Yemen because of the violence. And one American citizen has already been killed amid the Saudi airstrikes, but Washington says it's having a very tough time safely accessing the area to evacuate anyone else.
The U.S. can provide, only limited assistance, especially now given that our embassy is closed.
With the U.S. unable to evacuate all the rest of its citizens, Arab American advocacy groups launched a website called StuckInYemen.com. The idea is to help Yemeni American citizens make their way out of the combat zone, but also to file lawsuits against American officials. We spoke to the creators of the website.
That website, we've now received over 200 complaints of people who are trapped in Yemen trying to get out. Some people were traveling for work. Many were traveling to visit family, and many were actually trying to bring their families to the United States. It's the middle of a war zone. Every other country is working to get its citizens out. The U.S. has said we are not going to do anything at this time. You're safer if you don't leave, if you stay there, which makes no sense. How are you safer staying in a war zone?
This is no way to treat U.S. citizens. This is no way to treat the U.S. citizens stuck in a conflict zone. Many of these citizens are scared. Many of these citizens are worried that, again, their life is in immediate danger. We've heard audio recordings of gunshots. We've been sent pictures, and this is a horrible, horrible situation. The U.S. State Department and the embassy has not fulfilled its obligations to these U.S. citizens, and they continue to leave them in immediate danger, and they continue to leave them to what could eventually be death for some of these individuals.
Would you dare to ride the ice of the world's deepest lake? Coming up on RT International, we meet a man who decided to take on the expanse of Lake Baikal, as you can see, all on the back of his trusty motorbike. The drought in the U.S. state of California is now the worst in over 1,000 years. The region is fast running out of water. For the first time in California's history, authorities have been forced to introduce mandatory restrictions on the use of water. Cities and communities have been told to cut consumption by a quarter, and anyone breaking the rules faces a daily fine of up to $500.
It just came out an op-ed in the LA Times that we have about 1 year of water left in reserves.
There have been cases where natural gas fracking has actually contaminated drinking water, and that's a huge concern in a state like California.
And yet the experts consider oil production one of the most essential industries in the California area. Official numbers show that fracking companies used some 265 million liters of water last year. Now, these figures are not worrying the state's oil and gas supervisor. He says fracking used a relatively small amount of water, the equivalent of 514 households. However, the locals are not so optimistic. A lot of social network users say 265 million liters of water is far too much to allow the fracking industry to waste. And some are calling for oil producers to be held responsible, and most of the activists agree.
So we're not just worried about consuming water, but poisoning what water we do have is the byproducts of fracking. What they've been doing, especially in the Central Valley, is injecting this very contaminated, very salty, often containing benzene, water into shallow aquifers and shallow water supplies. Water is not replaceable. We don't have any alternative sources for water, but we do have alternative sources for natural gas and oil.